Okay, so now that you're starting to get a lot of update and a lot of changes in your pipeline, I think now the good habit is to start to version and track everything that you're modifying in your pipeline. So if you, at some point you ever start to maybe introduce a bug and you want to be able to get back in time at the specific time it was introduced, using a versioning system for your code will help you to solve all those kind of problems. And it's also a good thing to use when you're working with multiple people in the same pipeline, so that at the end of the day, you can merge everything that every artist has been modifying and merge it into one single pipeline. So there are various systems that you can use to track your code. There's obviously Git, which is probably the most popular one. And there's also Mercurial, which is the one we're going to see today. And the simple reason why it will be the one I'm going to show you is because it's just the one I've been using forever. But as you'll see, those are pretty much the same kind of software. So if you know one system, you will pretty much know your way around in the other system. So in this first video, we're going to see how to install Mercurial on your system, as well as the different Python packages that we need for this training. Then we'll take a look at the Mercurial interface that we can use in Tortoise HG. Then we'll see how to make our first Mercurial repo and how we can add and track all our files inside Mercurial. And then we'll also take a look at the different in-your filter that we can use in Mercurial to tell Mercurial what we want to track or not inside our repo. So let's get started. So let's take a look at Mercurial and how we can install it in our system. So right now on this machine, the only thing I have installed is Nuke in with Python 2.7. So let's install everything that we'll be needing for this training. So let's open a web browser and go on the Mercurial website to download the installer. So we'll just type Mercurial here and go on the main Mercurial website, where you'll be able to find the various installer for all your platform. So in our case, we'll select Windows, which will download Mercurial, as well as Tortoise HG, which is the UI representation for your database. So since I have already downloaded the installer, we'll just go in my download folder where I have Tortoise HG. So just double click on that. We'll click next, accept everything. We'll just leave everything as default, click on next, and install Mercurial. So this is going to install both Mercurial as well as Tortoise HG. So we'll just click on finish. And to test if everything was installed correctly, we'll just open a command prompt. And the command line for Mercurial is just HG. Click on enter. And if everything was installed correctly, you should see all the various options attached to Mercurial that you can use using the command line. So we'll just close that for now. And to see if Tortoise HG is correctly installed, we'll just open any file browser, right click here, and you should have now two new sub menu to play with Mercurial in the system. So far so good. And the only last thing that we need to install for this training is two Python packages. So the first one is going to be the Mercurial Python package, so that we can talk to our repository using the Python API. And we'll just also install Mogo Engine so that we can save some repo in our database so that we can implement it in our pipeline. So we'll just open a new command prompt and we'll make a new virtual environment for this training. So just go at the root of my drive. So as you can see right now, the only thing I have is Python 2.7. So using virtual env, we'll make a new virtual environment. I just call it Mercurial and click enter. So this is going to create the virtual environment. And since I only have right now Python 2.7, I didn't need to specify the Python interpreter I need for this environment. So now if I click there, you see I have a new Mercurial folder containing the virtual environment. So now we'll just activate the environment. So Mercurial scripts, and we'll use the activate bat file to activate our virtual environment. So now you see that we're in this environment. So now we'll just install the two packages that we need. So pip install. So the Python library we're looking for Mercurial is called python-hglib. So this will install the Mercurial package. And we'll just also install Mongo engine. So pip install Mongo engine. And this is going to install Mongo engine in our environment. So I think we're pretty done with in terms of installing what we needed. So we'll just click that, close that, and we'll make a new Pycharm project to start building some code. And so just double click on Pycharm. And the first thing we'll need to do is specify the Python interpreter we want to use. So create new project. We'll just save this project in our home nuke folder. So going in our user in the nuke folder, we'll go here. Then we'll specify the Python interpreter we want to use. So we don't want to use the default interpreter of the system. Instead, we'll select existing interpreter and browse for our virtual environment. So we'll browse here, go in our C drive, Mercurial script, and select the Python interpreter. Click OK. We'll make sure to make available to all project. Click OK. And now we just need to create this. So Pycharm is telling us that there's already some file in this folder. So it's asking if we want to start from those files instead. So we'll just click yes. And now Pycharm will scan our virtual environment and build the skeleton so that you can see all the attached package that we have inside. So we'll just put everything in the background while it's building this skeleton. And while it's doing that, we'll start by making some files. So in our nuke folder, we'll just make our init.py file. So new Python file, call it init.py. And then we'll test if our two installed packages are working correctly. So we'll import Mongo engine and hglib. So now if we've done everything correctly, we should be able to import those two libraries. So we'll run our file. And as you can see, we don't have any errors. So Pycharm is seeing those two library. So now that we have tested everything, let's see how we can create an actual repo for Mercurial. So we'll just open the file browser and go in our nuke folder. So in my C drive, I'll go in my user and my .nuke folder here, and we'll just make a new folder where we'll be putting all our code as well as the Mercurial repo. So we'll make a new folder and we'll call this one Python. And inside this folder, that's where we'll be adding all our Python file. And that's where also we're going to create our repository. So to create a new repo, you just right click in the background of your file browser. And in the sub menu here, you have create repository here. So we'll just click on that. And this is going to create this dialog that basically just asks to confirm the path that we want to create the repo. And it's also asking if we want to add special file like the HG in your file. That is a special file used by Mercurial to specify which kind of file we want to track or ignore inside Mercurial. So we'll make sure to leave that checked, and then we just basically need to create the repo. So this is launching the Tortoise HG UI, but if we go back in the file browser, you see that we have two new files, one folder and one HG in your file. So make sure to enable the show hidden file of your system if you want to see those files, because as you can see, they're starting with a dot, which means that by default they're hidden in the system. So if you want to make sure to be able to see them, just make sure to enable all the hidden file of your system. So inside this folder is just internal file used by Mercurial to track all the changes that we're going to make to our code. So everything will be tracked here. So that's not the place where you want to mess, but just know that that's where everything related to Mercurial will be stored. Going back in our Python folder, we have the HG in your file, which is a file, like I was saying, that you can put info inside of it to specify some file to track or to ignore. So we'll be getting back to this file a bit later, so when we'll be specifying some file that we don't necessarily want to track. So let's go back in the main Mercurial user interface. So we'll just spread everything to make sure that we see all the important information. Like that. So there's three main part of the user interface that you will be playing a lot with. The first one here is the file listing. So as you'll be adding and modifying some Python code in your file system, that's where everything is going to be listed. So as you will be adding some file, you'll see that Mercurial will ask what you want to do with those files, and you'll have various options in this place to specify Mercurial how you want to handle those files. Here in the top portion, that's where you're going to see all the change set that you push inside Mercurial. So as you'll be pushing some update, you'll see all the various information, like which user pushed it, how long ago it was pushed to the repo, what if there's a description, you'll see it here. So that's where as you'll be pushing some change set in Mercurial, everything is going to be listed here. So that's going to be pretty much the most important portion of the interface. And here we have option to add some comment to our change set that we're going to push. So it's really important to put a good description each time you change something in your pipeline, so that anyone going and exploring the repository will have a good visual representation of what has been changed, and they will be able to find very easily maybe where a bug was introduced or a new feature. So it's really important to make sure to always put a good comment when pushing some change set to your repo. So let's see how we can start to add file and push change set in Mercurial. So let's get back in Pycharm now, and let's start to add some file. So inside our Python folder, let's make our init and menu.py. So we'll make new Python file. So we'll make our init file, and we'll also add menu.py. So now we have our two new files. So let's get back in Mercurial to see what happened. So right now you see that we still have only our HG in your file listed. So we'll just click on a refresh. And now if we take a closer look, we see that Mercurial has detected those two new files. So now the first step, we need to tell Mercurial what to do with those files. So by default, you see this question mark, which means that Mercurial detected those files, but they're not yet tracked in Mercurial. So the first set of action we need to do is tell what we want to do with those files. So for instance, if I click on this menu.py, I can right click and then I have various options. So I can add the file to the repo. I can also tell it to ignore it. So in our case, we want to add the menu.py so that we can track everything that we'll be doing with this file. So we'll click on add. And you see now that it changed from a question mark to an A, telling that the next time we'll be pushing something, this file will be added to the repo. So we'll do the same thing with our init.py. So we'll click on add. And we'll also track our hg_init file, which is a file that we're saying where we'll be specifying some file type that we don't want to track. So for now, we'll just add it. So now we've added everything we want to track in Mercurial. So it's time to do our first commit to the repo. So we'll just select the file that we want to push. And the first step you want to do is, before pushing an update to the repo, you want to put a comment to have a good description of the change set. So let's tell first commit edit menu and init. So now that we have this description, we're ready to push this to the repo. So if we click on commit here, the first thing we'll see the first time you're using Mercurial, it will tell you that you need to specify a user so that you can be tracked on who pushed the change set. So we'll just click on OK, and as you can see, Mercurial is opening the settings so that we can specify our username. So we'll just put John Smith and click on OK. So now you see that if we go back here, we have our change set put to the repo. So we see that we have the comment here. And if we click on the change set, we see what was added in this change set. And if we click here on the first part here, that's our current state of working directory. So if from now we start to add more file or change set, that's where everything that is different from this change set will be listed. So let's give a quick example. Let's go in our menu.py and just put, let's say, import nuke. And let's go back in Mercurial and scan this here. So you see that from our working directory right now, the menu.py is tagged as being modified from this from the last commit that we did. So if we click on this file now, you see that we see what has been modified from the previous change set. So let's just commit this change to the repo so that then we'll be able to navigate in various change sets. So we'll just edit import statement and we'll commit that as well. So you see now that we are starting to build more change set in our tree. So if we click on working directory, we see that we don't have anything different. So let's see the various options now that we have in this window. So you see now that I can right click on a change set and I can update back to the current state of this change set. So for example, if I go in the first change set here where we just add our two blank file, now I can click on update and do update. And you see that if now I go back in Pycharm, the text disappears because Mercurial has just switched everything back to the state of this commit. Now I can go here, click on update, where I've added the import statement in our menu.py file. So if I click update, you see that if I go back in Pycharm, I can see the import statement that we added there. Okay, so now that we've seen some quick example on how to add some basic code in Mercurial, let's make some real stuff that will be adding in Nuke and tracking it inside Mercurial. So we'll just update back to our import statement change set. So update. So now back in Pycharm, if we go back in the menu.py, we have this back. So first we'll go in our root nuke folder in the root init.py, and we'll just add the Python folder to the nuke plugin path. So import nuke and nuke.plugin add path, and we'll add the Python folder like that. And then if we go inside the menu.py, just to test that everything is working, we'll just put a quick nuke.message working. So just to test if our path is working, we'll go here and launch a nuke instance. So now if everything was working, we should have a quick message as nuke open. There you go. So we'll just close that and start to build some code. There you go. So first, maybe the first thing we would like to do is set maybe a knob default to our inside nuke. So to do that, we would go in the Python init.py. So we'll import nuke. And then let's say we want to add a default value for the blur. So nuke.knob default. And then let's say for blur, so we'll pass the class, then the knob, and the actual value that we would like as default. So let's say that we want 50 for all our blur size. So we'll just save that and launch a new nuke instance. Just put that here. Okay, so now if I make a new blur, you see that we have a default value of 50. So let's push this first change set to Mercurial. So we'll close nuke, say no, go back in Mercurial. So now if we click on our working directory and click reload, we see that we have modified those two files. So in the init, we've actually added this line here. So you see with the plus, we added the knob default blur size. And inside menu.py, we see that we've, from the previous change set, we've removed nuke and actually rewritten it. So you see the minus and the plus here. So it should pretty much look the same, but Mercurial has tracked what we've done so far. So let's push this. So I would come working directory and add a comment. So added a default value for all blur node. Like that. And then commit. So that has been added to our change set. So let's continue to add some more stuff. So going back in Pycharm, let's say that we now want to maybe build a new Gizmo that will be adding to the repo as well. So we'll just launch nuke. Let's make some quick node like that. We'll group that. And let's just maybe pick one of the node. So pick, let's maybe pick something like the rotate of this transform. Click OK. Click done. And then we'll export this as a Gizmo. So come here, export as Gizmo, and we'll put it in our nuke folder. So going back in the home directory, in the nuke folder, Python, and let's call this Gizmo test.gizmo. Save this. So now we'll close Nuke. And then let's just add a menu entry in our menu.py. So let's make toolbar equal new.toolbar, and we'll want to access the nodes toolbar, so the side toolbar of Nuke. Then we want to add a new menu, so let's maybe fxphd menu equal toolbar dot add menu. Let's call our menu fxphd, and let's add a call statement to our new Gizmo. So fxphd menu dot add comment. First argument is the text that we want in the menu, so test like that. And the actual comment that we want is new.create node, and our Gizmo is called test, so we'll just call test like that. So let's save this and launch Nuke to see if our menu is working. And if we go here, we are our test with our Gizmo. So let's do another change set push to Mercurial. So we'll just close Nuke. Going back in Mercurial, if we reload, we see now that menu.py has been modified with the updated code that we have here. And we also see that Mercurial want to know what to do with this newly made Gizmo file. So we'll right click on it, click on add, click the checkbox, and we're ready to push this as well. So added test Gizmo, and once again we'll hit commit, and we see now that we have that here. So now let's pretend that we'll be modifying this Gizmo, but this time we'll introduce maybe a problem in our Gizmo. So we'll just open Nuke once again and modify the Gizmo. So we'll call our Gizmo here, and we'll just copy it to group so we can modify it. And let's say that I will pick another knob, so manage user knob, pick, and we'll pick something else, maybe the scale of this other transform. Done. And once again, we'll export it as a Gizmo, and we'll just override our test Gizmo here. So we'll click on save, override, like that. So now if we close Nuke, start a new instance, call our test, we see that we have added this back. But let's say that is breaking maybe the Gizmo in terms of production, that it's not working the script anymore of your artist script, and you want to quickly go back to your previous Gizmo, and that you haven't saved any backup copy of it. So now pretty much all you have to do is close Nuke. No, don't save anything. Just go back in Mercurial here to the previous change set where you firstly push this Gizmo here. So, well, first let's push the modification we just done with this Gizmo. So you see it's modifying, it's flagging that the test Gizmo is modified. So just maybe modified Gizmo, commit that. So now if we want to go back quickly to the previous state of this Gizmo, all we have to do is go back here, update back to the previous change set, update. And now if you'll see that if we launch Nuke, the Gizmo will be in the previous state that it was saved during this change set. So if we go back, click on test, you see that the added knob is no longer there. Okay, so now that we've took a quick introduction to how we can push in Mercurial, let's take a look at other options that we have in Mercurial before jumping into more complex code management. So let's take a look now at the in-your file that we can use to specify Mercurial which one of the file we want to track or not. So let's jump back in Mercurial here and just update to the latest change set. So now we're back with the modified Gizmo. So now let's go back in our Python folder and let's make, let's say, a new blank text file. So make text document like that. And at this point, let's also tell the OS that we want to see the file extension. So we'll just come here, type show file extension, and we'll change the Windows preference so that we can see the file in our system. So change setting on show file extension, show the settings, and show it in file and folder, and also we'll uncheck hide extension for known file types. So we'll click apply, okay. So back in the file browser, we see now the file extension of each file. So we'll just go here and click on reload, and we see that Mercurial is asking us what to do with this text file. So let's say that we don't actually want to track any file that are plain text files. So maybe sometimes in your new folder, you'll be adding some type of file that needs to be there, but you don't actually need to track them as they'll be modified. So instead, what you can do if you only have one file, you can right click and tell Mercurial to in-your this specific file. But you can also, using the in-your file of Mercurial, tell some rules by default to Mercurial to know what kind of file they need to in-your. So let's go here and right click. And actually, there's a few different ways to edit this file. So the easiest one, I think, is going in the sub menu and select to edit the in-your file. So edit in-your filter. So this will open actually what's inside the in-your file that we have here. So right now, I don't have anything in this file. So we need to specify some filter that this file will apply to the repo. So here we have different syntax that we can use to apply in the file. So let's start with globe, which is pretty much like a plain Unix syntax. So for example, let's say that we don't want to track anything that is a text file. We could use star.txt and add it like that and close. So now if we go back here and reload, you see that the text file has disappeared in the file list of Mercurial. So Mercurial is not trying to tell us that there's something happening with this kind of file. It will just in-your anything that is a text file. So I could copy it multiple times. If I click reload, you'll see that since they're all using text extension, Mercurial is not trying to track anything like that. But you'll see that if I go here, go back in the edit in your filter, and let's say I delete those two lines and click close, go back in Mercurial and do a quick reload, you'll see that it will ask what I want to do with those files. So going back in your file, that you could also edit it directly using the file by opening the file here. So we'll just re-edit the file really quickly and reapply the text. So global start.txt, add and close. We reload, they're not there anymore. So now if we take a look at the actual file, you see it's just the basic syntax declaration. So we're using the global syntax, and here we have .txt. So let's say now I go back here and I change the extension of one of the files. So rename and maybe doc, like that, apply. If I reload, you see that it's trying to track this type of file. And if I come here in the in-your file and add star.doc, save this and reload here in Mercurial, you see that it's being removed. We can also use the some regular expression if we need to specify more complex syntax. So let's say that I just go here and I'll delete those files for now. So just delete everything. And often when you're doing some development, you'll create some test file, some Python text file in your repo. So now let's, using the regular expression, let's specify some rules so that Mercurial will ignore all those text file as I'm making them. So let's make, go back in our repo, let's make a new Python file. And let's make test.py, which will be a file that I'll be making some test code. So right now, if I just go here, reload, you see that it's trying to track test.py. So let's make a new Python file. And let's call this one test2.py, like that. So now I have two test files. So going back in your file here, let's make a regular expression. So first you need to declare the syntax. So we'll change for globe to regex p for regular expression. So here we just need to put our regular expression. So let's just put a simple one. So anything that contains test, like that. So now if we go back here and reload, we see that anything that has test has been removed. So let's make just maybe a more complex rule. So let's say I want to remove anything that starts with test and has a digit after. So let's put a simple regex for that. So any something that has test and then a digit right after it. So now if we save that and reload, you see that only the test with the next digit has been removed. So you can make any kind of complex syntax here if you want to omit any kind of type from Mercurial. So you can use the global, which is a more simple, simpler syntax. You can just put some basic file extension you don't want to track, or maybe in the same case here, you could just use, if you're not used to using regular expression, you could put test.py. So that will also work to remove this file. So you can pretty much go as complex as you need if you want to omit certain type of file or folder from your repo. So this concludes our first video on Mercurial. So in the next video, we're going to see how we can collaborate with multiple users in the same repo of Mercurial. And then we'll take a look also at the different branching options that we have inside Mercurial. So see you in the next video.